Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Fits. Let's see what fits today. Yesterday we were talking about the aim of Zen is to see it has no aim. Well, so let's see what we can aim at today. I wanted to talk about Satchitananda. I'm still working on that phlegm. So let's start with my symbols. Sat, Chit. The sound is Ananda. Now this word Satchitananda, well, it's a Sanskrit mantra, almost. It means, Sat means being, Chit means knowing, and Ananda means bliss. I want to check out Yogaville, Swami Satchid, C-H-I-D, Ananda, it's Yogaville's in between Farmville and Charlottesville in Virginia on the James River, and Swami Satchitananda is probably one of the most influential yogi monks. That's what a Swami is, renunciate, that ever came to the West, because he came here in the 60s. He was known as the hippies guru. He opened Woodstock, started integral yoga, which has got centers around the world, and he built his dream called Yogaville on about 400, 500 acres along the James River, where he built the Lotus, L-O-T-U-S, Light of Truth Universal Shrine. And go to the website and check it out. It's such a beautiful place. It looks like it's a temple from India that has been levitated up and dropped into the river basin of the James River. And it is a spiritual center. Actually, it was built on the sacred grounds of the tribes that live there, and it really is the embodiment of Satchitananda. The architecture of the temple is Satchitananda in brick and mortar. So when you go into this temple, into this sacred place, you are in Satchitananda. In other words, the temple itself is Satchitananda. So you're not looking at it, you become it, if you so surrender to it. So let's look at Satchitananda. And if it's better understood, it's being, knowing, and bliss. You know, Joseph Campbell always said, follow your bliss. Well, this is what he was talking about. But it's better understood if we switch it around and say knowing, being, bliss. So if we break it down and we say knowing, what does knowing mean? Well, you know, we just assume knowing. If I say it's raining, or it's too cold in here, or any statement, that sofa's over there, we just assume I know. So if I say it's raining, I don't have to say I know it's raining. We just assume I know. So I know is behind everything. I know, and so we just make the statement, it's raining. I know it's raining. Okay, so knowing is kind of like the whiteboard here. The whiteboard is knowing, and what it knows is what's written on here. So all form, all experience, inside and outside and inside, is what we know. And we just assume, the knower, So it's kind of like a ghost in the machine, because you can't turn around and see the knower. You can't make the knower into an it. You can't give it a name, you can't give it form, you can't give it being. So the knower, that which knows, is always outside of what it knows. Just like the mirror knows the reflection, but the mirror can't know itself. It can just see the reflection. So this is a function of our consciousness. The knowing, self-reflecting consciousness that knows stuff. And then we name the stuff. And if we don't know what the stuff is, we get a name for it really fast, because we can't stand to have any stuff that doesn't have a name. That's like in Space Odyssey 2001. Remember the obelisk that appeared throughout the stages of man's evolution? It had no name. There's no reference to it. So whenever something appears that has no name, we immediately have to know it by naming it and giving it a reference to all that we know. So nothing can remain unknown. That's why we don't know the knower, because the knower cannot have a name. I cannot have a name. You, as the knower, cannot be named. Because if you name it, then you give it a reference to the past, to what we know. But the knower is always now. The knower is always new. The knower is always unknown. So you are unknown in your true nature. I am unknown in my true nature. And the knower there's only one knower. It's the names that are different. It's the being that has multiplied. It's the being that is infinite forms, multiplying upon multiplying to make the creation, you see. But the knower is always one. The knower in you, and the knower in me, the knower in the dog, in the cat, in the worm, in the butterfly, in the bird, is one knower. Is one knower, you see. And so this one cannot be known, because as soon as you know it, you don't know it. As soon as you know the knower, you have made it, you are outside of it. And you have to be outside of something to know it. For me to know this, this is coffee, okay? I know this is coffee. It's not lemonade. I know it's coffee. But the knower has to be separate from the coffee in order to know it. So just to be conscious of being, just to be conscious of it, you see, I have to be separate from it. So this creates a separation. Knowing of being, you see. So when knowing Sat and Chit and Sat, when Chit knows Sat, it's knowing of something. I know this, but the knower is separate from this, you see. So this is like an operating system of our mind that really became dominant with the dawning of the scientific method at the end of the Middle Ages. Scientific method, this is the operating system of the scientific method. The scientific method assumes a scientist, a knower, who knows it. And he discovers the laws of it, and he makes stuff. And then he makes a world, and then we live in it. So we're living in the world created by the I-it consciousness of the separation from the Chit and the Sat. The subject is separate from the object. The observer is separate from the observed, you see. So this is an operating system. Just like on the computer. And it makes stuff. We need it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the way the mind functions. But this particular operating system rises out of another consciousness, another awareness, which is Satchitananda. And Satchitananda is knowing as being, or I am that. Knowing as being. Now, knowing as being is not knowing of being. And we love this state of consciousness. It's unity consciousness. Whenever we are totally engrossed in anything, forgetting time, forgetting that you're even doing it, in the sense that, am I doing this right or whatever. When we are engrossed in being, we are being. Go to our entertainment. We have to pay for this unity consciousness. I talked about this yesterday. We have to pay for it because all of our entertainment is based on creating the conditions where we can experience unity consciousness and the cessation of the pain of I-it consciousness. There is a pain in I-it because there is a separation of the knower from the known. This is like, here's one, the knower and the known is one. Separate it, the knower knows the hand. So now this is a functional survival consciousness. We need it to catch a bus, make a tool, whatever. However, we forget the unity consciousness that supports it. This unity consciousness goes to sleep in our culture. So we long for it. So we seek it tomorrow. It becomes the promised land. Trump got elected on it. Trump says, I'll restore unity. I'll restore America. I'll restore consciousness to I am that. He even says I am that. He says, let me be your voice. Let me be, you and I become one. One voice. Let me be your voice, he says, you see. So politics, everybody is, everything is about restoring unity. If you desire a donut, you're separated from the donut. I want donut. Why do I want donut? Because I imagine that when I get donut, I will be, my unity will be, my bliss will be restored. I eat the donut, I am the donut for a moment. So for a moment I have bliss because I have the pain of I wanting donut, or it, you see, ceases. So that's behind all of our addictions, all of our desires and yearnings, which never end, you see. We're all seeking unity. Of course, God is another name for unity, but the mistake when we use the word God is that we make God into an it. Now I want it. I just say I want God, you see. That's just the same thing. It's a heresy in Christianity to be God, to be it, you see. Of course, Jesus said the Father and I are one, but then he's God, so only he can do that. I can't do that. I can't become one with that. I can't be that. Because what happens when I am that is that my sense of separate self disappears. It's like death. So we have to create safe places to die. The TV, the movie, the book, the crossword puzzle, even play. When we can really play, we die into the play. You see, we're not there looking at our watch, how long am I going to have to play? As soon as I look at the watch, you see, I am it again. I'm separated from being. And so now we think, where else can I go? So being, that we long to be is always put in the future. So I got to get there. The moment will be better if I could just fix this air conditioner. You see, if I could just fix this, if I could just get this straight, you see. I need more time in order to get to the bliss of being myself, you see. You see how this is so insidious? Is that when I become an I, a knower, and everything is an it, I'm like in the picture, you know, of the little boy outside, the little orphan outside the house in the winter, Charles Dickens, and he scrapes away the frost and he sees the family in there having turkey and everything, and he's out in the cold, you know. So out in the cold is the way we feel. We're exiled from being because we have become an I, a subject, a me, an ego that is separate from the experience of reality. So I'm separated from my own experience. This is what drove me basically into the spiritual journey way back when I first became an adult, I guess, was this realization that I was separate from myself. I was always on the outside looking in. And of course my upbringing in a military family exaggerated that feeling, because I was always, military kids are always outside looking in because they're always moving. I married a woman who grew up in Blackstone in this house that she grew up in, who was still living here, and she still goes out and hangs out with her kindergarten friends. The people, all the network of all the people she grew up. So, yeah, I don't want to digress into that, but the point is that this feeling of being outside of my own experience and finding the experience unsatisfactory is the product of living entirely in the separation of Sat from Chit. You see, so when these get separated, we create pain, and Buddha called this dukkha, suffering. It's the suffering of separation, because we've lost the primary unity of our consciousness. It's gone to sleep, and we're wandering in this exiled world where we have a great operating system, but we've lost the hard drive. So the operating system can't fix itself. I know, if you have a computer, you have to get outside of the operating system with some other startup disk in order to optimize the operating system. So this I-it operating system that has become so successful is all fragmented, loaded down with all the data and the knowledge that it's accumulated. The lie, just go to a bookstore, just go to a bookstore and look at all the books that are being written. And nobody throws away any books. I mean, my house, warehouses, people that love books never throw them away. They just keep coming out. They fill the walls, you see. And then you recycle them. I can't throw it away. I have to give it to somebody. But you always get more books. So this operating system just gets loaded down with the known. And it can't move. It can't function. And it's dysfunctional. And it's painful, but it can't fix itself. So we know that the operating system can be optimized and restored to its original purity if you have a startup disk or a disk utility or something that can operate it on it from the outside. And that's what meditation is. Duh. Meditation is sitting and letting and taking the effort off of the secondary consciousness, this I-it consciousness, taking the effort off of it that is trying to restore unity. You see, this system here can't restore unity. It can't fix itself. But it has to because there's pain. It's like the oyster with the grain of sand. I've got to get rid of this irritation. There's a rub here. There's a rub in this system that won't let us rest. So we keep trying to fix it, to find the cause of the rub. Why do I suffer? Well, you're the cause of it. The conditions are the Republicans, the liberals, the communists, the terrorists. Somebody's to blame. The devil. You see, there's some cause, we believe, for this persistent irritation that is created by this operating system that we believe, because of its success, that it's the only way to know. You see, because our culture, it's beginning to support it, but our culture up until now has discounted knowing as being and bliss, has discounted unity consciousness because it doesn't fit into the scientific method. Science cannot deal with consciousness because the scientist is consciousness itself, and the scientist can't study his own consciousness. Quantum physics is at last. The science has evolved into quantum physics, so it begins to see this. Quantum physics says, well, the observer, the scientist, affects what it observes. So we only see the perception creates reality. Well, we throw this around all the time, but we don't understand it. Perception creates the reality we live in. Perception creates it, and then we live in it. And our creation creates suffering, but we can't fix it because we can't get we can't get to the hard drive. We can't get outside of our operating system. And now, our nation is divided into two operating systems, two operating realities, left and right. So the left sees its operating system, creates one reality. The right sees another reality created by its operating system, and they are contradictory. And this creates a bipolar America, so we yearn more and more to restore the unity of one America. That's why Obama got elected on the rhetorical promise of one America. And Trump did it too, restore America. So anyway, we're looking at a sleeping awareness that is primary, that is prior to the evolution of the I-it awareness that became dominant after the end of the Middle Ages because of its success in creating comfort. The scientific method creates comfort. Technology creates comfort. Better air conditioners, better heating systems. It's all about comfort and controlling the future and eliminating pain. We're so sensitive now. If there's the slightest bit of irritation, we get really upset. I do passport pictures, and Mexicans come to the door in the wintertime, and they might be standing there in a little t-shirt or something. And I said, "Aren't you cold?" And they says, "What? I don't know what you mean. It's just weather." You know, their comfort zone is different from ours. Other cultures have a different comfort zone. Ours is very fine-tuned now. The slightest little discomfort drives us crazy. So we keep living in a narrow and narrow zone of comfort. And then our military supports our comfort by providing the resources and protecting the resources that create our little narrow zone of comfort, you see. Other cultures don't live there. They have a very wide comfort zone. Look at other people, other cultures. How can they just sit there with flies on them? You see, one fly will drive us nuts. Anyway, So I think we're looking at the Zen of Satchitananda, and to understand that this unity consciousness is always already present. Eckhart Tolle calls it the now. Now is always already here, and now is always knowing being. Now, when we become now, knowing and being are one. When I'm not now, knowing is separate from being, and I want to get to being in the future. So I want a better moment than now. Now is crap. Now is uncomfortable. There's something wrong with now. That coffee table's got a crack in it. I need a new coffee table. You see. So this whole idea, that now can be better is basically the clue that we're separate from now. As an I, and now is an it. And the I is like Yahweh in Genesis. Old Yahweh was like the potter who makes the pot, but the potter is separate from the pot. So Yahweh is basically a metaphor for this I-it consciousness. The knower, God, is outside of the known. God is separate from creation. But in the mystical view of the world, in other religions, in the East, God is not separate from creation. God and creation are one. In the West, we separate them. So this is to say we're made in God's image. Well, yeah, we're made in this image of God being separate from his creation. And that's the way we live, being separate from the world that we are creating. Each of us creates a world, but we believe we're separate from it, and then we blame the world for our pain that we created. Each of us creates a world and then lives in it, just like an artist creates a painting and then lives in the painting he created. Each of us creates a reality and then lives in it, but we believe, because of the dominance of this I-it awareness operating system, that somebody else created this world. And now we got to find out, well, who did it? Who hurt me? And if I find out who hurt me, or who hurt my world, I believe I can fix it, so I'll be in bliss again, you see? So we keep kicking the bliss down the road, trying to fix the world in order to get to the bliss that already exists. The world is already blissful. The world is already as perfect as it can be. Now, perfect doesn't mean good. It just means complete. It just means it can't be different than it is. It is perfectly what it is. And that doesn't mean that you can't fix something. It just means that you're okay whether you fix it or not. That the okayness, okay, the I'm okay, no matter what the world does, is this awakening of this primary awareness that is knowing as being. So, let's end it with that, and I thank you for dropping in and trying to follow this rather meandering journey we're taking into the Zen of understanding our own mind. That's what Zen is. Trying to understand not your mind, that's psychology, but my mind. I want to understand how my mind works. You can understand how your mind works. And if you understand how your mind works, you're free from the operating system of the mind. And you tap into the hard drive where all the power and all the space and all the energy is. All the creative energy comes from the hard drive, and it operates the operating system. So if we need to get to the source, we have to go to the hard drive, and you can't get to the hard drive unless you relax the tension of the operating system that is trying to fix itself. I hope that's a good metaphor to work with, because it really is, the computer is a modern metaphor, because our mind created the computer as a reflection or an extension of our own mind. The computer system is our mind in form. But we need to understand it, or else we'll be in Space Odyssey 2001, where HAL takes us over, where the computer runs us, which is basically where we are right now, where the operating system runs us and we don't know how it operates. Okay, thank you for dropping in.